Okay. We'll call this meeting to order. We begin this gathering by acknowledging the land on which we gather is the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee and the Anishinaabe people, many of whom continue to live and work here today. This territory is covered by the Upper Canada Treaties and is within the land protected by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Agreement. Today, this gathering place is home to many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people. Acknowledging this reminds us that our great standard of living is directly related to the resources and friendship of the Indigenous people. So, thank you for participating this evening. We have a relatively small, or six items in our file. And are there any additions or alterations to the agenda?
The only alteration is adding a member or Vice Chair David Ringler to the agenda. He was initially regrets.
We're happy to have you with us. Would a member of the committee please consider moving to adopt the agenda? Jamal, thank you. And the minutes from the last meeting, May 15th. Tom, thank you, sorry. The declaration of conflict of interest of members for any meeting, for a meeting which they may not have been present at, or for any of these files. Does anybody have a conflict of interest? No, neither do I. Is there any request for withdrawal or adjournment?
There are no requests for withdrawal or adjournment.
Great. So we are your neighbors and friends, the volunteer members of the Committee of Adjustment. We will be reviewing these 6 applications that will, oh yeah, there's a whole other thing I'm supposed to read. Where's that? We will be reviewing minor variance applications and or consent applications, and I've got a lot more to say that's written down right here. So there are two major types of applications: applications for consent and severance, applications for minor variance to municipal zoning bylaws. Evidence may be required to be given under oath if deemed necessary. Please address your comments and questions through the chair. That's me this evening, sitting up here. Copies of decisions will be mailed to the applicant and or any person who appeared before the committee or filed a written request to receive notice of decision. Pursuant to the More Homes Built Faster Act and in the matter of consent applications, the applicant, the minister, or a specified person or public body that has an interest in the matter has the right to appeal either the decision itself or the conditions of the consent to the Ontario Land Tribunal within 20 days of the mailing of the decision. Minor variance decisions may also be appealed. However, they must be made within 20 days of the making of the decision. That'll be this evening. And the cost of an appeal is $400. That was the preamble that I missed. So with all of that understood, we are ready to start our first application. So this is for 66 Greenwood Avenue. Would the applicant and or agent please come down? Right there. So if you just please state your name and address, and we would invite you to provide us with any background information. Well, we have the file in front of us, but any further information you want to clarify or identify, this is your time to do it, please.
Yes, good evening. I'm Mike Stepien, and I own this property. I'm the applicant. So this being the address in question, or you want my home address as well?
Typically, we get your home address as well.
Okay, yeah. So 205 Cairns Crescent in Fort Erie. Yes, so basically, I purchased this property to build based on the R2 zoning. The R2 zoning states that 20-foot frontage, sorry, I speak in feet often. I think that would be 6 meters. If that's confusing, I'm sorry. But is 20-foot frontages for each dwelling in R2 zoning. And so this having 60-foot frontage was the main reason I purchased it, and the house not being in great shape as well, needing either major renovation or just reconstruction. So it was pretty ideal for increasing better use of the property and creating more housing. So based on that, I worked on a design with the R2 setbacks for side yard. The rear yard has plenty of rear yard depth. The front yard setback, which seems to be determined by the neighboring properties on each side and an average of that. So that kind of determines that. So although that's noted in here, that's the reason for that depth from the road. So really, it just came down to site-specific, most useful design. And the thinking there was to create a raised bungalow situation for the end units, which would not then tower over neighboring properties, and then create a 2-story in the middle unit, which has quite a bit of separation from everything else, and therefore more square footage in that unit. So that was the reason for narrowing it, because also when you take into account side yard setbacks, that means you're losing frontage or facing of the dwellings on the sides, right? So that was the thinking, with the center unit being a little narrower than the 6 meter that would be typically required, just to give more space for the side yards and create the square footage with the 2-story in the center unit. So that's the purpose. I noticed a lot of the comments from the planning staff were along the lines of the center unit in the future upon severance, not conforming to the R2 zoning. But again, I think we need to look at townhouses as somewhat unique in that the middle unit doesn't have side yards, and in this case, you know, has plenty of square footage. And I know it's noted in here as well, a little bit of concern about outdoor amenity space.
Well, just to focus you a little bit.
Yeah.
So while the report is rather extensive, there were 2 variances you're asking for to accommodate these proposed. Variance 1 was a minimum lot area reduction. Variance 2 was a maximum front yard. So those are the only 2 items that we're going to be focusing on this
Right,
evening.
and sorry, yeah, sorry. Yeah.
And then, having read the report, presumably you will have noticed that the staff report recommends denial of variance 1 and approval of variance 2. So presumably, you'd want to speak more specifically to the lot area, that the lot that you have doesn't have the minimum area that required, and the fact that staff is recommending denial of that variance. So
Yes.
Is there anything about that in particular you want
Well,
to say?
definitely, I'll get to that. Yeah, sorry for, I was just trying to give the whole picture, right? Because I think that's important going forward, especially for the city and some of the new housekeeping amendments, right? We're trying to create these dwellings, and I've been straightforward with the city in my application, and that's where this comes into play. Because actually, if you look at the numbers, 273 square meters as opposed to the required 280 is definitely minor in nature. Why they're taking issue is because I was straightforward to say that under the new housekeeping amendments, if this minor variance is accepted, I'm allowed to proceed with building permit application, right? But the reality that we're in on the cost of real estate and even the cost of property like this that I bought is this structure will cost well over $2 million in total cost, okay? Not many people are in the position to build units for people to live in that'll cost well over $2 million and to hold that as an individual property. So it's very, from a streetscape point of view and every other angle, if this is accepted as minor variance with this application, that would be built and all the surrounding neighborhood would see that structure as it is, right? So my thing is that I will then apply for severance to create individual dwellings for those. So it doesn't change the appearance, it doesn't change how it sits on the lot, it doesn't change anything. All that changes is how the town bylaws perceive the situation, right? And that's the issue we're running into. So sorry, I'm talking around the whole thing. I just want everyone to see the whole context. And yes, so then it comes down to lot area, which by this application, to me, would be hard to argue that that's not minor in nature. Where I think they're mentioning the concern is that if I proceed with severance, the middle unit becomes a lot less, the numbers become a lot larger on the required, right? So, but again, the reason for that is the middle unit is designed because it doesn't have side yards and it does have a deeper rear yard. And the only other thing is the parking out front, which they like to see 50% of the frontage. So let's just look at that middle unit. It would be a 9-foot, so 2.75 meter, I believe it is, wide driveway, 9 foot. Well, if the frontage is 17, that leaves 8 foot as opposed to 9 foot green space, right? So it's slightly over the 50%. So that's even my point there, is that will be minor in nature when the time comes. I understand their concern, but it's just if we get hung up on these details when we're trying to create more units in zoning and the numbers are so close, that's the point I'm trying to make.
Just for clarity, though,
Yeah.
In the way that there are laws that govern traffic and laws that govern buildings, these happen to be the laws that govern planning. So it's not your inconvenience. It is that this is what's on the books right now, and in terms of checking a box to say that your proposal meets the current bylaw requirements, that's what has inspired the minor variance requirements. And that is the context in which we're reviewing this, is your application explains what you want to do, the supporting drawings confirm that. We have the staff report. We know the zoning bylaws. We have the staff report with their comments, which we use just as their comments. But if I may, for the moment, just have Dasha, if you're available, to speak to the analysis that was given in the report, but just to talk about what the possibility of allowing the reduction in lot area would mean in terms of deficiency for this development. I mean, you speak about amenity space and so on.
Through the chair, so if Urban's applicant is going to come forward with the severance, the middle unit is going to be deficient in the lot frontage, lot area, driveway width, and if he's going to propose any platform structures or anything that will impact landscaping coverage as well, landscape percentage may also be affected. So that are the deficiencies that we will be looking at the severance. So also I would like to clarify that once he's going to come for the severance, this minor variance application is not going to be longer in effect, and we're going to be looking at the new minor variance applications. So that's where the concern lies.
So the city, as you were suggesting, was in fact looking ahead to the time when you do want to sever, and pointing out the fact that granting, if you were granted these variances now, it's going to put further hardship on a future round of minor variances you're going to require, because we're already possibly approving something that's too small and then subdividing it up into pieces which are which are going to be too small in the future. So right now, it's being viewed as one lot. You haven't subdivided it. But looking into the future, as you have indicated, you do want to subdivide it. That's going to cause perhaps the additional minor variances at that time, which is coming back here for another application. So you're aware of that? Okay.
Yes.
Did you want to summarize? So are you satisfied that you have made the points you wanted to make, or did you have more?
Yeah, no, I think that's it. And again, I do understand that it would be pertaining to the middle unit upon, severing. Yeah, I understand we're working within the rules we have, the bylaws in which we have. I just know that, I guess, the one thing I want to say to this, just for the flip side of things, because this has been an ongoing process for quite a while, to get to this point of application. And when it was first reviewed, and the comments to me were, they consider this overdevelopment, yet with the rules as they stand with the recent housekeeping amendments, a semi would be permitted with 3 accessory ADUs per. So in that case, yes, that's allowed. Then we're talking actually 8 dwelling spaces, where this we're talking 3, which if anyone in the future ever wanted to put, ADUs on the end units, then, maybe 5. So that's the thing. I just think, I know we have a lot of rules and we're trying to work within them. I get that. Well, society needs rules. But I feel like sometimes we have to step back and look at it too as things have been unfolding, right? A lot of these bylaws were made before the housing pressure was fully realized in Southern Ontario. Now we're working in the context of the housing pressure. And that's why I'm proposing this. So
No, that's fully
it.
fully understood,
Okay.
and that's what the housekeeping amendment actually allowed for, some relief and increased density and some relief on some of the issues that were preventing that. So fully understood.
Okay.
If I could please just invite any of the members of the Committee of Adjustment if they have any questions of the applicant. Is there anybody in the auditorium who wishes to speak to this application? You, sir, are welcome to come down and sit right one at a time. If you're for moral support, great. If you want to speak independently, we'll bring you up one at a time to sit at the head of the horseshoe there, turn on your mic, state your name and address, and just have. Yeah, it's okay. That's why I'm giving you some friendly instruction to have a seat. Turn on your mic by pressing the little call button, which you got it. Name and address, please.
Randy McNeil, 64 Greenwood Avenue. Home address is 3775 Concord Avenue, Crystal Beach.
Okay, you can expect a Christmas card from the city. Thank you. So the point here is we're focusing on the 2 minor variances, which are lot area and front yard setback. And with that context, if you could, you're welcome to hear what you have to say.
Am I able to bring in any other concerns I have?
Within the context of, we're only deciding these 2 things, so we don't want to hear anything about anybody's character or personality or if they don't put their garbage out on time.
I have concerns about the building and my house.
Okay,
and where
please.
it sits.
Yep.
Well, for one thing, it was kind of confusing, that diagram. I'm not too used to reading them. But I'm seeing that they're going to be digging really close to my property, my house. I have I'm worried about my basement and how close they're digging. I have some experience at this. I have another property where they had to come over onto my property because of the new laws where they have to gradually dig out the basements now. They can't just cut them right out. So I'm thinking that's going to come very close to my house. I have a gas line that runs there. Also, I have the basement itself has some issues, and I'm worried about them being exasperated by, the driveway's been there for, I don't know, 70 or 80 years, right? It's not gonna be easy to take that driveway out, and so I'm kind of worried about that situation. Hang on a second. Oh, I also have a tree in my backyard, which provides a lot of shade in my yard. And by the looks of that design, my tree will be touching the house. It'll be leaning over into that yard. It does lead over into that yard. And it'll actually be touching that house. And the roots also go into that yard.
So just to those 2 points, and you can get to your other points just while we remember them. So after this process, could be the building permit process if the owner has everything they need, and they could choose to build another type of building, the semi-detached and so on. So you can prepare yourself for the fact there's going to be some development of some kind on this piece of property. And the proximity of your house to the property line, while it would be an obvious concern of yours, it doesn't prevent the owner of the property beside you from developing their property to the maximum legal extent that they can. The tree, similarly, would be something that if it's on your property, it's your tree. If it impacts a neighbor's property, the neighbor's entitled to prune it, sufficiently to their requirements, but not enough to kill it, kind of thing.
And the roots.
So that's a tree. Unfortunately, as important as trees are, it's not going to prevent development. So ideally, everyone gets along and they compromise and figure out how to preserve the things that are special of concern to you. So on those 2 items, in the building permit process, whenever that happens, and for whatever it's for, whether it's townhouses or semi-detached with 6 units or 8 units in it, there will be a process where the applicant will have to prove that where the services are on the site, that the services servicing your lot don't cross their lot, your gas line, for example, and things like a stormwater management plan, so that when this thing is finally built to whatever configuration, that they're not causing overflow rainwater onto your property and negatively affecting you. It would all have to go toward the street. So your concerns are addressed at that point.
So there's another process that will be coming?
No,
where
this is the only public process where you can air your concerns. But again, the height of the building is governed by the zoning bylaw, so they're not here for a building height change, and there are a multitude of other things that they could be here for. They're only here to say this current design is on a piece of property which the bylaw says is too small for the building that's going to occupy it when it's severed into 3, and the front yard is deeper than the bylaw says, and that's due to the fact that it's averaging out. So those are the 2 things that we're reviewing. The things that you brought up are obvious concerns that you would have, and we will take them in consideration in our review, but this building can mostly exist except for these 2 items which we're considering varying, and the staff report is denying the first one, which is the building area, and suggesting that the second variance be approved, which is the setback from the street. Did you have anything else other than those 2 points that you were?
Yes, the amount of room I'm going to have to do my maintenance on my property, like cleaning the eaves troughs, changing of windows, painting, and maintenance that I have on the side of the house, by the looks of it, would have to trespass over onto their property, maybe, possibly, to get to the house and do those functions.
So in this case, let's presume that this project goes ahead, and that there's in fact going to be a board fence, which is indicated on the drawing, built on the property line.
There will be a board fence?
Well, I just
There is one.
I see in the
There's
drawing
currently
that
one there now.
I see in the drawing that the proposed drawing that it has an indication of a board fence. So that board fence is your biggest obstruction between you and your house. The building itself is set back 1.2 meters or whatever the side yard setback is, which we're not here to vary. So yes, your house may have been built at a time when that gap was not necessarily required, and it might infringe. This house has to be built to allow for that kind of minimum gap for maintenance. But your situation is a condition of your house when it was built. This situation is a requirement of this house being built this day and age. So the house itself isn't going to be an impediment, but if there's a fence there right now and the fence is on the property line, then you already know where the edge is, and if you're able to maintain your property with that fence there, then that should be the same going into the
Well,
future.
the fence, I built a fence, and it only goes to the back of the house. Now, I'm hearing that it's going to go all the way down. Is the fence going to go all the way down the property line, or?
Well, typically, the saying, fences make for good neighbors, right?
Yeah, good fences make good neighbors. I got 7-foot, 3-foots at home.
Okay, just generally, the conversation will go through me. So we
Yes,
don't
that's right,
want-
sorry.
I mean, I'm glad you're getting along, but we don't,
And we like the sound of your voice, so it'll be, I'm enjoying that.
well, thank you. You should hear me sing. So, right, the short answer is you have obvious concerns as a neighbor, and you're going to experience some discomfort while this thing is being built. We all do. Dirty roads, noise, vibrations, and so on. Other than to hear your concerns, they do not match exactly with what we're looking at here this evening.
Yeah, I understand that
But
when
it's
I read it.
but this is your time to say it, and you're right, it's your only time to say it, and you've been invited to do so, and we'll take those, your comments into consideration when we review the application.
So if there's damage to my basement and whatnot from the digging, that would be a civil suit? Is that what you're saying?
It is something that you would have to document, and if it came to a major problem, you'd have to take your evidence. Yes, not this beyond. I don't
You
know how
would
that
have to go
works.
civil after
I
that?
can't say for sure, but it's not through this process.
I see. Well, I don't know. Like I
Let's
said,
assume-
I am just.
let's don't
I've
assume
never
the
done
worst,
this-
though.
I've never done this before, so I don't really know the
Well,
process.
so far, you're doing great. So it's great.
I know, I've read, and that's what you wanted, that's what the point of the meeting was for, was those 2 points.
Yep.
And I realize that, and only have one chance to speak, and so that's what I'm doing.
You have been heard. Thank you.
My daughter has issues with the size of the building next to mine.
Did your daughter want to speak? You know, will your father be speaking on your behalf for your concerns, or did you want to speak? Okay.
You're better off.
Counselor, yes, Dave. Counselor.
I just wanted to make a comment. Assuming the location on the drawing for 64 is accurate, it would appear as if it's at least 1.2 meters from the lot line. So it would meet today's bylaw.
Correct. Probably very close. Hello, daughter.
Hi,
Please state your name and address.
Crystal McNeil, 64 Greenwood, St. Catharines.
Okay, so ideally, you will add something to the conversation that we haven't already discussed.
My consideration was more so regarding my privacy, because my bedroom is on that side of the house, and it'll block sunlight and all of that. I did take some pictures, if you could see how it is now, with a lot of sunlight and, a clear view.
But
at
we
this
would,
point.
we have done we would have revisited the site. We have Google Maps to get in behind buildings, so we're aware of the context. And certainly, when you move a big block of a building into a site which you're not used to, the size and configuration, it is going to have an impact on you in those regards. But there's nothing preventing them from doing that. So while you have been accustomed to the benefit of that light and so on, you don't sort of own the rights to it.
Of course.
So in as much as this building has to be a certain distance away from the property line on all 4 sides, it has to be a certain height and so on. That's a zoning bylaw, which would also govern on your property as well. This building is meeting most of those except these two items. So while I can appreciate that there'd be a visual impact on what you've become used to, it's unfortunately doesn't have a significant impact on the decisions that we're trying to make this evening.
Right, I do understand as well, like, I caught a little bit of what the gentleman was talking about in regards to the UADs, I believe they called them, or, one other thing I just wanted to mention is a little bit further up the street, they built similar buildings to this, more semis, I would say. I don't think it's a triplex, but the traffic is very terrible within that. There's about 8 or 9 cars parked on either side of the road where you have to kind of zigzag around the parking there.
It's almost one lane.
So with respect, so when an application is made by the applicant and distributed to the city, it would go through the various city departments, including traffic, engineering, planning, parks and rec, and so on. And they've all contributed to the overall city report, which is given to us as background and insight into their opinion. So, so while engineering did not flag that this development was going to contribute a significant negative impact on the street, no one knows the street better than the people that live on it. So you as residents, if there is a desire to have one-way traffic or parking only on one side of the street, not the other, that would be something that you would ideally talk to the city about, possibly through your city councilor, and see what traffic calming measures could be made. Certainly, this will have probably more vehicles and more people living here due to the density increase, but that's not, again, that's something that's been reviewed in our report and not necessarily something that has been shown to be a problem. The traffic control thing, as a resident, you have every opportunity to contact the city and share what you see on a day-to-day basis and have that try and have that remedied. But so
I realize they've gone through all the different regulations. I understand at a certain height. Now, the middle unit will be a certain height, right? And so it's going to be higher than the other two. So at a certain level, there has to be 3 meters on either side of the building after a certain height. And I'm sure they've already looked at that, and I guess it's okay. Now, the shorter ones on either end, I guess they're looking at that, the shorter ones? Is that what they're looking at?
is there an elevation in this package what the building's going to look like? I don't recall. I don't have mine. So the building is essentially one building with invisible subdivisions to make it a triplex. It'll have one roof. I mean, it's one building
No,
covered in
there'll be
one
3
roof.
roofs.
Well, yes, but they connect in a way that, since this is right now this is one property, that roof will have to demonstrate the fact that half the slope of the roof doesn't exceed the zoning bylaw for the maximum height. So somewhere in that roof configuration, which might look like 3 independent roofs, but it's one roof, there will be the highest ridge, there'll be the typical eave height, and half that distance, the applicant will have had to have proven to planning that that distance does not exceed, there we go, that distance does not exceed the maximum height allowed.
It was more so, it was, what I was reading anyways was, within a certain height, the minimum is 1.2. And when it's over that height.
That's an urban design guideline in a certain zone dedicated in the city for really tall buildings. This zoning would have just, boom, this is the height limit. And depending on your roof configuration, if it's flat or sloped, you measure it different ways. And I'll be happy to have a planning person clarify whether or not there is a height step back requirement for this particular zone that would apply to this property.
I realize that we're in a housing shortage.
I know, just one moment, please. Dasha? Or,
that provision only applies in R1. This is R2 zoning.
So there is, so you're right, it exists, and there are a number of zoning types, R1, R2. This is R2 where it does not apply in this case.
What is R2?
R2 is, R is residential, the 1 and the 2 speaks to differences, so the city, do you want,
Urban density, I think. really good use of
Both
the word.
R1 and R2 are low-density residential. R2 is traditional neighborhood, and R1 is suburban neighborhood. There are small changes in zoning provisions between both R1 and R2, but in general, it is low-density residential, so lower density for is intended for the use of the lot.
So again, I'm going to summarize that your concerns are obvious concerns that talk about your experiences that you're going to, the change in experiences you're going to have when this thing is built. And it's understood, but that does not have, do not specifically address these 2 items that we're reviewing today. So I would like to be able to move the meeting along if you have nothing further
Yes,
to add.
it's just the fact that I haven't had any input in that, and somebody somewhere in an office decided all these things, but didn't take into consideration the people that actually live there and the rooms.
So, so to that point,
So,
no, please, but to that point, when there's the zone we just talked about, it's a big color on a map. So your property, for example, I don't know how big your house is, I'm not sure what the opportunity is, but if someone like this person comes along and says, hey, I'll give you $1.5 million for your house because they have the ability to turn it into a triplex, then every person in that zone has the benefit of an enhanced value, you know, if someone else sees an opportunity and has the means to take advantage of it. You yourself could take advantage of it. So the idea of these zoning bylaws is you can't recognize every address having every individual requirements and characteristics. This process, this variance process, is an opportunity to recognize those individual characteristics of a property. But this person is taking advantage, is trying to use the tools that are available, except for these two items, to maximize the development, which is has been described as a response to the housing crisis, and it's a business opportunity. And every other property has that same opportunity for some future thing, but right now you're enjoying it as it is, and this is kind of the closest thing to you, and it's imposing. You feel like it's imposing, and those are what your comments are, and we understand that. But we do have 6 applications, so I feel like you've made your point. But do you agree that you've said what you wanted to say?
That's correct. I've
we've
said
said
everything.
everything we want to say.
Okay.
I still have other questions, but I don't know where I'm gonna get answers from. Where would I get answers?
Well, you could talk to your friendly planning staff at the counter at City Hall, and they could elaborate on those larger zoning issues that you just asked about, the zone R1, R2, what the intent is. There is an answer for that, but it's longer than we have this evening to go into.
Okay, I understand.
Great, thank you both so much.
Thank you
If you could-
for giving me a chance.
Yep, thank you. Anybody else in the auditorium wish to speak to this application? Excellent. Any further questions from the members of the committee to the applicant? Does the applicant wish to respond to anything that they've heard?
I guess the only thing I would say to that.
We don't have to. but-
Well, no, I really
and
would,
you're
because
talking
I
to me,
actually.
and you're talking to me.
Yeah, so through the chair, to our friends, I actually, this is kind of what I focus on, infill type projects. And so I do try to work closely with the neighbors to ensure, it doesn't disturb them any more than, absolutely necessary. So I'd be happy to give them my contact information before I leave.
After this meeting, it would be great
All
if
right.
you guys could make a connection. Thank you. So, at this point, I would like to invite a member of the committee to propose a motion or put forward a motion.
I just had a question to the chair, to staff. Understanding that the future concern about the lot being 243 or 234 square meters, if there was a consent application, that'd be considered at that point as a reason to maybe deny the consent. But if we were looking at a lot with 273 equally divided amongst each of the three properties, would staff had approved that, or what would be the context at 273, not considering the future state of the middle lot?
We have a what-if question. Can we answer what-if questions?
So every property that we are reviewing what's being currently proposed and what is the potential of the property, the use of the property in the future. So we cannot limit our understanding of what it is or make assumptions on that. So we need to see what will be kind of the worst case scenario in this case, and that what we're looking at in this case. Yeah, if you want to add anything.
Thank you, through the chair. I just might add that even though the magnitude of the ask of the lot area reduction is not a big number, it's going from, I think, 280 to 273 per unit, the test that must be satisfied in order for the committee to approve a minor variance, one of them is whether or not it's minor. And minor is both in terms of the magnitude of the number, but also the impact on the lot. Staff have significant concerns that, first of all, this lot is not big enough to accommodate a townhouse, a 3-unit townhouse. As evidenced in the drawing that the committee is reviewing today, we have a lot of concerns about the middle unit. Sorry, excuse me, particularly how much of that frontage is going to be dominated by parking and hard surfaces. This drawing shows a 9-foot wide driveway, which is quite narrow. It's certainly not wide enough for somebody to be able to step out of their vehicle onto a hard surface. So we would absolutely anticipate that it would, at minimum, probably have a walkway running parallel to it. And then we end up with a situation where we have a very narrow dwelling unit where their entire frontage is driveway and hardscape, which is completely contrary to the purpose and intent of our bylaws. So we're in a situation here where we have a lot that is not big enough for a 3-unit townhouse. There's other built forms that would be appropriate here and could be accommodated without having an entire frontage that is predominantly pavement.
Thank you. So we're still at the point where one of you have to make a motion. David?
Following consideration of all written and oral presentations, I move that variance 1 of application A3024, as presented in the notice of hearing, be denied, as the variances are minor in nature, not appropriate or desirable for the use of the land, and are not in keeping with the general intent of the official plan and zoning bylaw, and that variance 2 of application A3024, as presented in the notice of hearing, be approved. I don't believe there are any conditions. As the variances are minor in nature, appropriate and desirable for the use of the land, and are in keeping with the general intent of the official plan and zoning bylaw.
Thank you. Your booming voice doesn't really translate through that microphone very well, but so the motion is in support of, as it turns out, staff's recommendation for denial of variance number 1 and approval of variance number 2. All of those in favor of the motion? So the application has been approved unanimously. So for the denial of 1 and approval of 2. So you got some more work to do. Thank you. There's no more comment, I guess. You would have, you as the applicant have an appeal option, yeah.
Yeah, no, it definitely would be the route to take because, again, in line with the province. But I'm just a little surprised that no one had any questions
we're done.
through the chair.
We're over, done.
Yes.
Mic off.
All
Thank
right.
you. '53 Christie Street, please come on down. So this variance application is to facilitate the construction of a proposed covered deck. 1 minor variance for lot coverage. We have the drawing. We have you who are and live where?
My name is Trent Pettit, residing at 53 Christie Street. of which the application is for. I am the agent and also known as the husband to the property owner.
That's a tall order of titles. Congratulations on all of those.
Thank you.
This is where you would, this is your opportunity to speak.
This is the second appearance to the committee for this project. The first application was approved back in December of 2023. During that application and approval process, planning and building services were provided with original drawings which included not only the setback requirements for variance application, but it also included the lot percentage. When it was approved back in December of 2023, we as the homeowners went and applied for building permit. Building permit denied because it did not include the percentage of lot coverage. Even though that our drawings on the first application included it, planning and building services failed to put it into the report as a required variance, as an oversight. When we were denied the building permit, I met with Madeline Furco in planning, of which she profusely apologized for the oversight of not including the percentage of lot coverage, but she said, unfortunately, it has to be reapplied for because you need that variance. Henceforth, I am out of pocket another $3,202.50 in a second application that's delaying our process, of which I've provided Elaine with a request letter for the Committee of Adjustment for a refund for the second application, which we as homeowners and taxpayers don't feel that we should be obligated to pay for something that should have been appropriately covered in one application.
Thank you. We are aware of that, and we appreciate your insight. So we'll deal with the request after we deal with the minor variance, the request for a refund. Any questions from the committee to the applicant? Anybody in the gallery wish to speak to this application? Would somebody, okay, Carrie, thank you.
Following consideration of all written and oral presentations, I move that variance A3324 as presented in the notice of hearing be approved as the one variance is minor in nature, appropriate and desirable for the use of the land, and is in keeping with the general intent and purpose of the official plan and zoning bylaw.
If there's no further discussion, all those in favor of the motion? Okay, so your variance is now approved. Building permit then is on its way. With respect to the request for a refund, do we want to hear from planning, or are we good to go? Okay, Jamal?
I move that the minor variance application fees for A33-24 be refunded to the applicant.
Should we clarify that it's the second round of fees as opposed to, yeah, okay? That's good. That's what you meant, right? That's what you meant, right?
That's what I meant.
All
yes.
right. Is there any questions, comments, discussion?
Should we also verify through you to planning that that's basically what happened?
That was my, does planning, Claire, speaking on behalf of Madeleine.
Through the chair to the committee member, that's correct. There was a first application, and at building permit, a second variance was identified.
All right, so we have a motion. All those in favor of the motion to refund, that's so, You got everything you wanted.
Thank you,
We
everyone.
apologize for the delay in the schedule.
Thanks for your considerations.
Okay. Our next application takes us to 210 Reichard Street, where there's a lot of activity going on lately. This is an application that requires some land severing and some associated minor variances, all to facilitate a 14-unit private road development, townhouse development. We have, so boom, there you are. Boom, there you are. So please state who you are, where you live, and anything else you wish to add to this application.
Good evening, Chair, committee members. My name is Ethan Lamont. I'm a planner with Upper Canada Consultants. Our address is 30 Hanover Drive in St. Catharines. I do have a presentation, just a short presentation I'd like to go through. So we got through the intro, so next slide, please. So here's an image of the subject lands. The lands include the entirety of the parcels municipally addressed as 206 and 208 Reichert Street, and a portion of the rear yards of 210 and 210 and a half Reichert Street. The property's about half a hectare, or about 1.3 acres in area, and has 43.58 meters of frontage on Reichert Street. It's irregularly shaped and is intersected by the Hydro 1 easement, which is generally shown in yellow on that drawing. For the hydro lines that cross the property. The surrounding land uses include a mix of residential dwelling types, including single detached dwellings, as well as some condominium townhouse sites. Under the city's official plan, it's designated low-density residential. The OP permits a range of dwelling types, including detached, semi-detached, duplex, triplex, quadruplex, fourplex, and townhouse dwellings. The OP also generally encourages the provision of a full range of housing types within residential areas to accommodate projected growth and to provide options that reflect a range of individual housing needs, especially in areas where infrastructure and services already exist. The property zoned as R1. The R1 zone permits and regulates a range of residential uses similar to those listed in the official plan, including detached, semi-detached dwellings, townhouses, and private road developments. Next slide, please. So as noted, the applications pertain to the proposed development of the property. The development proposal consists of a private hammerhead roadway and 14 dwelling units, which includes 2 semi-detached dwellings nearest Reichert Street, in addition to 12 townhouse units, which are divided between 3 blocks. The road and unit orientation is dictated by the property geometry and the hydro easement, which creates some design challenges. The development also includes 9 visitor parking spaces, in addition to the private driveways and garages for each unit. We're currently working through site plan approval with city staff, through which technical details of the site are being worked out, including servicing and landscaping. Next slide, please. So the development lands are proposed to be assembled by way of the boundary adjustment applications that have been submitted. So presently, the lands addressed as 206 and 208 Reichert Street, which are shown in blue, are owned by the applicant, and they're identified as Part 4 on the submitted sketch. The boundary adjustment proposes to add a portion of the rear yards from the neighboring properties to the lands. So the lands to be added are shown in orange on the slide, and are identified as Parts 2 and 3 on the submitted consent sketch. The lands shown in green are to be retained for the continued use of the existing semi-detached dwellings, and they're identified as Parts 1 and 6 on the consent sketch. And then finally, a 1-meter road widening along Reichert Street is proposed to be dedicated to the city. It's shown in red. It might be a little bit hard to see here, but it is there, and is identified as Part 5 on the consent sketch. Next slide, please. So we've requested a number of variances to facilitate the development proposal, which are outlined on this table. Staff have done a wonderful job of providing analysis of the requested variances in the report, and I support the recommendations, so I won't get into depth here. But I will point out that a majority of the variances are technical in nature and due to the configuration of the parcel as well as the hydro easement. I do also want to note, with respect to variance 8, the maximum driveway width for units 6 through 8, which is recommended for refusal. After the applications were made, we had subsequent discussions with staff with respect to this variance and agreed that the variance is not needed, and so we'd withdraw the request for this variance. Next slide, please. So we'll leave my comments there for the time being, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thanks so much, very thorough. Are there any questions from the Committee of Adjustment members to the applicant regarding this? Okay. Anybody in the gallery wish to speak to this application? Seeing none. So just in terms of, I'm curious, whether we withdraw variance 8 of application A2824 or deny it, the end result's the same. You just, one's a little more positive and the other one's a little more negative, right? Okay, so it doesn't really matter. Okay. So at this point, I guess we're at the point where we can invite a committee member to make a motion. Don't all show you, thank you, David.
Following consideration of all written and oral presentations, I move that variances 1 to 7 and 9, variance application A2824 as presented in the notice of hearing be approved, subject to the withdrawal of variance 8 and subject to the conditions outlined in the technical report, as the variances are minor in nature, appropriate and desirable for the use of the land, and are in keeping with the general intent of the official plan and zoning bylaw, and that consent applications B070824SC as presented in the notice of hearing be approved, subject to conditions outlined in the technical report as they're desirable and compatible with the surrounding area, have no adverse impacts on the surrounding properties, have regard for section 5124 of the Planning Act, conform with the policies of the city's official plan and zoning bylaw, maintain the intent and purpose of the provincial policy statement, and do not conflict with any applicable provincial plans.
What he said was, the motion is going to be in support, follow the lines of the staff recommendations.
Can I just clarify? I'm not going to make you repeat that, but I believe it's the withdrawal of both variance 8 and 9, which pertain to the driveway.
I thought it was just 8.
Isn't variance 9 being denied or recommended for denial?
No.
Yes.
Oh, hey, what?
Through the chair, to the chair, variance 8 is being recommended for denial. Variance 9 is being recommended for approval.
Correct. As I thought I understood it. All right. With that clarity, all those in favor of the motion? To the applicant, your application's been approved.
Thank you.
So, 20 Village Green Drive. So we're looking for minor variance to an existing side yard. Would you, the applicant or agent, please state your name and address and let us know what your thoughts are about the application?
Sure. Kristen McNutt with Jordan Station Design Co., 3836 Main Street in Jordan. We don't have anything further to add to staff report. We reviewed the recommended approval. Just wanted to quickly touch on that it meets the 4 tests, and we've worked with staff to ensure the design exceeds the landscape amenity space targets, maintains separation from the street, and then also allows for clear driver sightlines. Just wanted to thank staff for their very thorough report, and I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Thank you so much. So this is, again, a minor variance to accommodate a garage addition. We have, and staff's report, proposed garage addition. Oh, why did I have to say that? Yes, Elaine?
It's just the extension of the existing dwelling. It was, the notice was modified.
Okay,
Yeah,
right.
just correction,
Sorry.
yeah.
Thank you. We have, and staff's report recommends approval and the applicant isn't questioning that, of course. Are there any questions from the Committee of Adjustment to the applicant? Anybody in the gallery wishes? Oh, sorry, Tom. Oh, yes, sir. If you saw what happened before, if you please come down to the horseshoe, take a seat at the top of the rainbow, and hit your mic. Let us know who you are, where you live, please.
My name is Ron Bolt. My wife and I own the property on 33 Village Green Drive, which is sort of diagonally across from 22. My concerns are from the site plan that we received in the mail. The site plan says that its scale is 1/8 of an inch to a foot. I think that needs to be corrected. It's 1/16 to a foot.
I'm going to assume that they were scaled down for the purposes of fitting them in an envelope. Is that most likely planning staff?
That's what happened, yeah.
Okay, so good, keen observation,
Okay.
but the staff would have received the full scale drawings.
Okay. My concern is that because the house that is there is going to be demolished and a new house is going to be built there, I was a little confused by the residential addition and renovation title that was given on here, and it should have been demolition and new build, as far as I'm concerned. But my concern is for the neighbors that are next door. The original house was 39 feet long. The new build proposed is 61 feet. So it's going to come out farther, 10 feet out farther in the front and 11 feet approximately in the back. But what I noticed was when I was looking at this is that the interior side setback is no longer 6 feet. It's reduced to 4 feet. And when we moved into the subdivision 50 years ago, we were told that it was 6 feet on the house side and 4 feet on the garage side. And that's my concern here, is that with the additional length of the building, moving the proposed building 2 feet closer to the neighbor, I don't think it's fair.
So what you are observing is the current zoning bylaw allowing the 1.2 meters or the 4 feet for the interior side yard, which is an interior side yard is a property line which abuts adjacent property.
Yes.
So in terms of the bylaw checklist, it meets the current zoning bylaw requirements. And we're here to talk about the exterior side yard, which is the property against the street on the corner. And that's the reduction that's being requested.
Mm-hmm.
So your concerns with the interior side yard, while you're correct, because the dotted line on the screen behind me is the footprint of the existing house, and the proposed new house is closer to the interior side yard, but it is within the limits stated by the zoning bylaw. So yes, you're right, but no, it's not against the zoning bylaw.
Well, I just noticed that there's no other buildings on the garage side proposal. And if the house was to be built the size that it is, I would recommend, I suppose, that the house could be moved over 2 feet towards the street. There's no other houses there. And rather than being pushed 2 feet closer to the neighbor.
This is without a doubt a proposal that wants to maximize the building potential, and they appear to be taking full advantage of what they're legally allowed to do despite that. So I guess by way of another example, any house, if a house burnt down next to you, they wouldn't have to build it exactly the way the footprint it was before. They would build it to the new zoning bylaw, which would allow it to expand to that extent. The house that's there now is a reflection of either no zoning bylaw when it was built or the zoning bylaws that were in place when it was built. But this is a here and now proposed development that is taking advantage of the here and now zoning bylaws. So similar to the other application we heard, yes, this is going to be stand in contrast to what everyone's been used to seeing on that site due to its size, but we're only here to look at that exterior minimum exterior side yard, which is against the street and not impacting any shared property line. But that is the one thing that we are considering this evening, is the other side of the house.
I guess one of my concerns is that if we allow this, one of the nice things about our neighborhood, Royal Henley Village Green Drive neighborhood, is that there is space between the houses. If you go up the 400 and you see to Toronto, the houses are so close you could step from one roof to the other. And I just am afraid that if we start allowing people to get closer to them, then it's going to set a precedent, and that's my concern.
Well, it's beyond precedent, it's law. So right now, yes, that is a legitimate concern, but it's actually the law that they can be 1.2 meters away from the property line, as close as they can get in this zone. It could be in downtown, it might be 0. So so just to clarify, it's not precedent, it's actually the zoning bylaw right here, right now, that they're adhering to. So, and the intent of the official plan zoning bylaw, again, as discussed, is to allow for increased density and that sort of thing. And these zoning bylaw housekeeping amendments that have been going on, and every 5 or 6 years when they refresh the zoning bylaw, it's with that kind of increase in density that they're actually pushing the zoning bylaw. So everything you're observing is correct, but with respect to the measure with which this application is being weighed against, it meets that 1.2 meters is what every new house is going to be doing off an interior side yard. And we're talking about the exterior side yard this evening. So we understand completely what you're saying, and we will consider that in our decision making.
Thank you.
Thank you. Does the applicant wish to feel the need to respond to anything?
Sure. Just wanted to address the concern about it being new construction versus addition renovation. It is, to confirm, it's a renovation. And then just to reiterate, we're only looking at the exterior side yard setback, although I can definitely understand the concerns about the interior side yard. It is permitted by zoning.
Have any questions emerged from the committee members? Otherwise, we'll take a well-crafted motion from Tom.
Following consideration of all written and oral presentations, I move that variance application A224, as presented in a notice of hearing, be approved as the variance is minor in nature, appropriate and desirable for the use of the land, and is in keeping with the general intent of the official plan and zoning bylaw.
All those in favor of the motion? Okay, to the applicant, your application's been approved unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
By my calculations, we must be at 6 Pine Street, where we have a minor variance application for maximum lot area for an accessory structure, required 10%, proposed 15%. And this is to facilitate the construction of a proposed detached accessory dwelling unit. And the staff report recommends approval with a condition. And if you would be so kind as to state your name and address, we'd be happy to hear your thoughts on the matter.
Yes, David Serafino. I live at 6 Pine Street. I own the house with my wife. And should I just continue now?
Please continue.
Okay. Yes, my application is as Chair stated, to increase the allowable landscape open or lot coverage by 5% that would normally be allowed for accessory dwellings. As a longtime proponent of for infilling, most of my adult life, I'm very much in favor of Bill 23. I think it's just brilliant to find the resources that's in people's backyards to add residential dwellings, and thereby meet the city's requirement or the city's goal to achieve the housing needs. But there's also benefits to the individual homeowner with respect to creating a residential dwelling in one's back or side yard, and there's many benefits. Well, one is it will increase the property value. The other is that it could be a source of rental income, either long-term or short-term or occasional. It could be used as a granny flat. It could be used to house an adult child who hasn't flown the coop yet, but wants his independence, his or her independence. For my wife and I, this for us is to allow us to age in place as we grow older. We both have health issues, and my wife particularly, and there's a very good likelihood that a wheelchair could be in our future. And we can't stay in our house if we can't negotiate stairs, because we have a 2-story house that's separated with all of the amenities we need to access. So what we decided to do was to build an ADU, now that the Bill 23 has been passed, and encouraging the city to pass the bylaw. And this would allow us to live in a ground level flat should that opportunity, or should that ever come to pass, that need ever come to pass. Now, I hope that we can stay in our house, but if we do need care in the future, we're getting older, we could have a family member or a friend or a hired caregiver live there, or we could live in the ADU while with the caregiver living in our house. That is our reason, and my application meets all zoning requirements. It has a recommendation for approval from city staff, and there's been no objections, no comments objecting to it. So we're certainly ready to move ahead with it as soon as we get approval from the committee here. I appreciate this opportunity to appear before the committee. Now, I want to note that we have received a heritage grant. We live in the Port Lucie Heritage District. We have already received a heritage district for the project. And the issue that I can understand, as explained to me, with respect to that 10% rule that states that detached accessory dwellings cannot cover more than 10% of the yard space, is a matter of drainage. Now, I know I provided a lot of material with my application, probably more than I needed to get into. Sorry for all the reading, but I wanted to be thorough. I did do an aerial view, Google aerial view calculation of the properties on my block. There's 19 of them on the block surrounded by Ann Street, Pine Street, Elgin Street, and Main Street. And right now, without the ADU, I'm within the top 3 of the most landscape open space, the highest ratio of landscape open space to property, to yard space. When I add the ADU, I drop to 10th place, but I'm still higher than most of the other, than 9 of the other properties. So there's plenty of room in the backyard. Now, I should note at this point, this wasn't in the application, but I found this out later, but the property directly behind me, which was built in 2017 or 18 or so, it was granted a minor variance in 2017 by this committee for a reduction in the minimum lot size from 300 square meters to 260 square meters. That's 40 square meters on a property that's half my size. I'm asking for 27 square meters. Okay, the rationale for the rule, drainage, and I understand that. I'm a certified engineering technologist, trained in municipal technology. I once worked for the city, so I understand these things and I support them fully. Too much water draining off the properties goes into the sewers, the combined sewers like we have on Pine Street. it overfloods them, it causes flooding in basements, it's a big problem. Hence, we had to all disconnect our downspouts. When I bought the house in 1978, that's what I had to do. Now, the drainage from my house, the only part that drains onto the roadway is, and that would be on the right-hand side of that drawing, is the area that would be the front of the house, half of the front part of the house, the part that would slope down, and the porch on the front, the white area there, and anything that drips off the garage on the right-hand side. And most of the time, that would not drain onto the road unless it's really heavy rain, because it would soak into the ground before it does do that. The part that would drain onto the road is half of the driveway and the concrete walkway, the blue area there, and that represents 8% of the total yard space that drains onto Pine Street. So drainage is not an issue. Everything else stays on the property. The land is flat, it does not drain onto my neighbors' yards. You cannot have a puddle in that yard because the ground, first of all, it doesn't drain, and the ground in Port Dalhousie is a very permeable sandy silt. So you can't build a skating rink unless you put plastic down. So I think that I've addressed the issue of drainage. Now, there's precedent on my property for an ADU, and one was built on the property, according to my neighbor when I first moved in, who was quite an old man in his 80s, who had lived there, and he told me that the people next door to him, which is my house, when the son came home from the Second World War, he and his wife and infant child built the house onto the back of the garage and lived there for the time being. When I bought the house, it was a dilapidated structure at that time. It was built onto the back of the garage. I tore it down and I built a playhouse for my son. Then it became a shed as he grew older. And then once he had grandchildren, it became a playhouse again. And I tore it down last year when I was replacing the garage. And I'm applying to build this ADU onto the back of the garage over the footprint of the original ADU and playhouse that was there. It's much larger, but it's still covering over that same. So there is that precedent I'd just like to draw your attention to. I think that's all I need to say. I could go on about the environmental.
Oh, you don't need to go on.
I know, exactly. Yeah.
We're on the same page.
But I practiced all this, so.
Oh, I don't want to deny you that, but let's just see what kind of questions we have.
Yes,
if you don't
please.
mind. Could you turn off your mic for a moment, please? So I'd like to highlight the fact that you have staff approval for your application, which is a big plus. They just want, there's a condition about removing temporary sheds. And are there any questions or concerns from the committee members to the app? Well, hold on. Any comments, questions? No? Anybody in the gallery wish to speak to this application? Oh, yeah? No? Okay. Everybody feel like whatever this motion is going to make the applicant happy? Okay, good, great. Motion, please.
Just a
We'll go
quick
for the motion.
question. There's no, through the chair to the applicant, there's no issue with the conditions? No. No, okay.
We're going to go ahead with the motion. I think everything's going to be fine. Jamal. Do you think your mic is on? Because it's not.
I apologize for that. I'm just going to start over again. Following consideration of all written and oral presentations, I move that variance application A-24-24, as presented in notice of hearing, be approved, as the variances are minor in nature, appropriate and desirable for the use of the land, and are in keeping intent with the general purpose of the official plan and zoning bylaw.
Tom, are you voting already? All those in favor? Oh, okay, hold on. Does it,
Approved with the condition as recommended in the technical report?
to remove the temporary structures?
Yes, he didn't include it in his motion, that's all.
I felt like he meant to, and we totally
believe
got that. But thank you for that clarity. So, with respect, your motion makes reference to the condition that the staff is, which is why we asked him about that before we started reading the motion, right?
Yes.
Great,
That's
thank you.
correct,
All those in
yes.
favor, again? Everybody still in favor? All right, excellent. Congratulations, your application's been approved
you.
unanimously.
Can I ask a question?
Do you want, okay.
It's in regard to the appeal period of 20 days. Now, can anybody appeal that?
No, used to, not anymore.
Okay, who can appeal that?
City,
Your neighbors?
no, not the neighbors. Only you and the city and certain utility providers. You have nothing to worry about. You just have to wait it out.
No, well, that's the thing. I mean, is there any way around that?
You do have to wait it out.
Okay, all right.
You look well enough. You're going to survive the wait out. All right, thank you. All right, that brings us to our last application at 314 Linwell Road. What's going on Linwell Road? Oh, did I already not go there? Oh, I did. I'm there. Another attached garage. It's a minor variance application to facilitate attached garage. Minimum exterior side yard, 4 meters down to 2. I'm having like deja vu all over again. The applicant agent is here. We know who you are. We know who you work for. We know where you live. Anything you wish to add?
I don't know, that was my work address. It wasn't where I live. I don't have anything to add. We're good with the condition. I did want to mention we're gonna have windows on the second floor anyways, but the more windows, the better, right? So, I'd be
Okay.
happy to answer any questions if you guys have any.
Any questions from the committee? Don't seem disinterested. Is there any, you sir, over there, do you have anything you wish to add to this application? Are you biased in some way with this application? No. Okay. All right, a motion, please, regarding this application. Carrie, thank you. You've cleared your throat. You're ready to go.
Move that variance A 32-24 as presented in the notice of hearing, as presented in a technical report, complete with the one condition. The variance is considered minor in nature, appropriate and desirable for the use of the land, and is in keeping with the general intent of the official plan and zoning bylaw together with the purpose.
Thank you. All those in favor of the motion? Oh, look, it's just an agreeable crowd here. Congratulations, your application's been approved unanimously.
Thanks. A lot nicer to be here when you guys all like my stuff.
All right, so that's those are our 6 files. I started off a little flustered, but got in my groove. I'm going to work on that as the meeting went on. New business.
Just to let you know that there is a special hearing on Tuesday, July 9th at 5 p.m.
We received the package today somewhere in my thousands of emails. Date of next hearing, regular hearing, is July 17th. Motion to adjourn. Great, thank you, Tom. We are adjourned.